Think back to being 8 years old. Summer felt endless. A single afternoon could stretch out so far, it felt like its own small lifetime. You had so much time, you didn't know what to do with it. Now you're older, and somehow an entire year vanishes before you figured out what you did with the last one. You didn't imagine that as a child, but the real answer to why this happens is far stranger than you think. Time isn't speeding up, not in any physical sense. The clock on the wall moves at exactly the same rate it always has. What's changing is inside your brain. And once you understand the mechanism, you'll never experience a year the same way again. Let's start with a number. When you were 10 years old, 1 year represented 10% of your entire life. That is a massive chunk of existence. It was loaded with firsts. First time riding a bike without falling. First time staying up past midnight. First time someone broke your heart. Every year at that age was dense with experience your brain had never catalogued before. Your nervous system was running on high alert, constantly recording, constantly filing. By the time you're 40, 1 year is only 2.5% of your life. It holds almost no firsts anymore. You know how to drive. You know how to navigate a conversation you don't want to have. You know what heartbreak feels like and roughly how long it lasts. Your brain doesn't need to record all of that again. It already has the file, so it compresses, it skims, and when you look back, there's almost nothing there. This is the core of what psychologists call the proportionality theory of time perception. The philosopher Paul Janet first described it in the 19th century. He noticed that a 10-year-old experiences a year as 1/10 of their life, while a 50-year-old experiences that same year as 1/50th. Not just proportionally shorter, psychologically shorter. Your subjective sense of duration scales with how much of your total life a period represents. The math works out, and it is brutal. Each year really does feel shorter, not because you are imagining it, because your brain is measuring time against itself. But the proportionality theory is only part of the story. There's a second mechanism at work, and it's even more unsettling. Your brain doesn't record time evenly. It records novelty. When something new happens, when your environment changes, when your body moves through unfamiliar space, your brain pays attention. It lays down rich, detailed memories. A week in a city you've never visited can feel like a month in retrospect, but a week at home doing the same routine, it evaporates. There's almost nothing to look back on. Time passed, but your brain filed almost none of it. Neuroscientist David Eagleman has studied this effect extensively. His research shows that the brain's perception of duration is tightly linked to how much information it processes and stores. A rich event creates a rich memory. A routine event creates almost nothing. When you look back at a period of your life, what you're really doing is counting memories. And if the memories are thin, the period feels short. Your brain doesn't have enough material to reconstruct a full sense of duration. This is why your teenage years feel like they lasted forever in retrospect. They were overwhelmingly new. Everything was being processed for the first time, falling in love for the first time, deciding who you were for the first time, failing in public for the first time. Every one of those experiences lit up your hippocampus like a signal flare, and your brain recorded it in extraordinary detail. You have more memory from those 6 years than from the 15 that followed. And here's what that means for your present. Most adults settle into routines that are almost completely frictionless. You wake up the same way, drive the same route, sit in the same chair, talk to the same people about the same problems. Your brain loves this. Efficiency is its primary directive. Familiar patterns require almost no energy to process, so it stops paying attention. It runs the day on autopilot, and suddenly it's December and you can't account for where the year went. Psychologist William James wrote that the years seemed to grow shorter as one aged because the days themselves had ceased to be memorable. He was describing the same mechanism over a century before neuroscience had the tools to confirm it. The more automated your life becomes, the faster time appears to move, not because time is moving, because your brain stopped measuring it. There is a third piece of this that involves your body's internal clock, and it cuts even deeper. Your brain regulates its own sense of passing time partly through physiological processes, heart rate, metabolism, the rate at which you process sensory input. Research by Mark Whitman at the Institute for Frontier Areas of Psychology in Freiburg suggests that as you age, your internal pacemaker, the neurological mechanism that ticks off subjective moments, begins to slow. Your brain lays down fewer subjective time markers per hour than it did when you were young. The external clock says an hour passed. Your internal clock says it was 40 minutes. The world seems to move faster because your internal reference point is ticking slower. You're experiencing fewer subjective moments per unit of clock time than you did at 20. Children don't experience time the way adults do for exactly this reason. Their internal clocks run faster. Everything is vivid, immediate, granular. An afternoon feels large because their brain is logging more ticks per hour, more moments per afternoon, more life per day. Now here is the part no one tells you. This is not fixed. You are not locked into accelerating time for the rest of your life. What actually determines your subjective experience of time is not your age. It's how much your brain is being asked to process. Researcher Françoise Hartog found that time perception can be radically altered by introducing novelty, interrupting routine, and forcing the brain to attend to unfamiliar input. Travel does this. Learning a new skill does this. Having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding does this, not because these things are inherently virtuous, but because they force your brain out of autopilot. They require real-time processing, and real-time processing creates memories. What this means practically is striking. A month spent doing something genuinely new will feel longer in retrospect than a year of comfortable routine. In the moment, difficulty often feels slow and unpleasant. But look back at it from the other side and you'll find something there. Weight, texture. The sense that something actually happened. The years that felt long in your memory are the years where things changed. The years that vanished are the years where nothing did. Your ancestors understood something about this without ever being able to articulate the neuroscience. Hunter-gatherer life was characterized by constant physical novelty, new terrain, new threats, new seasonal challenges. The environment never let the brain settle. And while that was genuinely dangerous and often miserable in ways modern life is not, it had one consequence worth noting. Every day was different enough to register. Every season was logged. You live in a world engineered for comfort and repetition. That is genuinely good. But your brain is still running on ancient software that only archives what is new. So here's the practical truth. If you want this year to feel longer when you look back on it, you don't need more time. You need more texture. You need to put yourself in situations your brain has to actually process rather than automate. The geography can be small. You don't need to go to a new country. You need to go somewhere your brain hasn't mapped yet. You need to talk to someone who challenges what you already think. You need to make something your hands have never made. You need to be a little lost. Your brain will resist this. It wants the path it already knows, but the path it already knows is the one that disappears when you look back. Tonight, when you sit down at the end of the day, your brain will have processed most of it on autopilot. It will have skimmed your hours and filed almost nothing. The year will have moved the same way years have been moving since you stopped being new to the world. But now you know what's happening, and you know what interrupts it. Summer still feels endless. You just have to make it strange enough that your brain has to start paying attention again.